what I've been doing is just the genealogy of my father's side of the family here. But all of us, whether we know it or not, I had no understanding of that genealogy until a few years ago. But whether we know our heritage or not, whether we're adopted and we haven't been introduced to our birth family, we all share magnificent ancestors. Magnificent ancestors revealed to us by the Hubble telescope. I'll talk a little bit more about that, the science part of the talk. Michael and I call our mission, we are itinerant evolutionary evangelical evangelists. I'm a long-time evolutionary humanist, UU. I feel as I'm a UU ambassador in very many audiences that I go into, many of which where I cannot stand up and speak because I am a humanist. This is a congregation in which, as a humanist, not only am I accepted, but my perspective is celebrated. Michael comes from a more theistic perspective, though he and I collaborated on this book, and everything in this book I can completely agree with as an evolutionary humanist. I feel privileged to be in the audiences. He's even been in some evangelical churches where he's able to preach, thank God for evolution, translating God into no longer being trivial. He'll talk much more about this. But he's characterizing the old vision of God as being a trivial version compared with the version we come to when we understand how vast the universe is, how old the universe is, and how creative it has been throughout its entire 14 billion year story. Any of you been watching or the streaming video for General Assembly going on since Wednesday, Thursday? Have any of your members are in General Assembly right now? Okay. I've been actually catching it. I've never been to a GA before, but they keep up on the website for a few weeks the worship services, some of the plenaries, and some of the special talks that have been given. And if you want to learn more about our UU heritage and what's going on around the country, take a look at it. Just go to uua.org, and right there from the homepage you can click on. Today's the last day of the 4-day process, but you can go and listen to it. And what really struck me was I was listening to one of the components. They had gathered together 12 UU ministers from what they call breakthrough congregations. That is, congregations that have had tremendous growth within a 5-year period. And they gathered these ministers last fall together, 12 of them, for 4 days, at which the staff of our UU national organization listened to them talk and share ideas. So there was a presentation that you can watch on the video of what happened at this group. They brought out 10 principles, 10 things that they had learned that brings vitality into our organization, such that people beyond just us humanists, there is nowhere else for us to go on a Sunday morning. This is it. This is it if we're going to come to any church, any congregation. But for others, for pagans, for theists, for Jews, for Buddhists, for spiritual seekers, New Age, who have other choices of where they can go. What is it that draws into growing congregations? The number one thing of these 10 points was mentioned was having a saving message. Having a saving message. That is such that when you walk out, you're not simply saying, well, that was an interesting sermon. Yes, that's interesting. He or she had a good point there. No, you feel it in your heart. You've had some saving message brought to you that allows you to walk out in a new way, at least for the moment, whether you hold it or not, but at least for the moment, something that gives you a new perspective, something that gives you hope, either in your outward workings in the world, hope for the world as a whole, some inspiration to find a way to do a new good in the world, to extend yourself into the world in lasting ways to ripple out, or for many times in our lives, and for many of us, something that they call looking within, something that gives us a charge within and a sense of new possibility within our own little lives, the kinds of things we might drop a stone into our joys and sorrows container here in silence and not even say it to anyone. It's that deep within us. Is there something that we can do? Certainly this process here, one of the advantages of being such a small congregation is you can do this. And no one's afraid to come forward because they can't stand to speak in large groups. I've been in many pulpits of some of the largest churches, Unitarian Universalist congregations in America, and the very large ones have had to dispense with this joys and sorrows ceremony. So there are advantages to being small and staying small. So what I'd like to do this morning is give you a sense of why Michael and I stay on the road, why we've dedicated our lives. We don't even have a home anywhere. People ask, what's your home base? North America. We don't have a home. We live out of our van and the generosity of people like Marty Dodge, who has offered us his place to house it while he's in Alaska these next 2 weeks. What keeps us on the road is the inspiration we, Michael and I, have personally gotten from having a sacred understanding of the universe. As you mentioned, one of our mentors, Thomas Berry. A 14 billion year story that doesn't make us feel small and insignificant. And why do I want to learn that? Or that's just science. No, that makes us feel like we have a magnificent ancestry. We are part of an amazing and intimate kin relationship with the universe, and not just with life, but with the stars, as I will move into. What I'm going to be talking about here this morning is a sense of our outward connection with the vast universe. What Michael will be doing here on July 9th, when he comes and does a presentation here at the UU Church, part of his program is going to take a look at the inward inspiration that we can get from this story as well. About 4 years ago, I was doing a special program for kids, different from the kids program, the family program I'm doing right after the church service here and after the potluck. But I was doing a program called We Are Made of Stardust. It was an hour-long program for kids and their moms and dads or grandparents who came with them. And when I was getting ready for the program, I was setting up a whole bunch of Hubble telescope. I understand that you all are having the Philharmonic is coming here and doing a Hubble telescope extravaganza next Sunday. I'm planning it out. Anyway, Allison Clark, she's just connected me to everything. But the Hubble pictures that we have, to me, as a UU, that I can stand up here and have Hubble pictures as being part of the sacred objects here in the front of our church, the Hubble photos. I was setting up these Hubble photos, and let me go over here, setting up these, and this one in particular, there were 2 little girls who came in a little bit early, and the oldest one was 8 years old, and she walked right up to this picture, and she asked me, she said, "Is this the Eagle Nebula?" And I said, yes. It's also known as the Pillars of Creation. It's one of the most famous Hubble telescope photos. She then pointed at this spot here, this glowing golden spot, and she said, "This is where baby stars are being born. This is where baby stars are being born." Now this was before I'd given my program. Someone, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, someone had given this girl an opportunity to have an intimate relationship with the universe. I like to call this chart that I made the new periodic table of elements. Familiar with the regular chemistry class, periodic table of elements? You see the same C for carbon, O for oxygen in here? Same that we have here. When I was in kindergarten, scientists discovered something that I count to be among the greatest scientific discoveries, particularly for connecting us with kinship beyond the life of Earth, but with the rest of the universe. What's our relationship to a universe full of 100 billion galaxies, each with perhaps 100 billion stars? When my mother was born, our best scientists, my mother's dead now, but when my mother was born, our best scientists thought the entire universe is what scientists now call the Milky Way galaxy. And then after that time, scientists began to discover more and more, and of course with the Hubble, way gone. I mean, 100 billion galaxies. Well, in 1957, scientists discovered where the chemical elements came from. They began the discovery process. They're still in it now. It's just amazing. Astrophysicists, chemists, thermodynamics people came together in order to discern how the chemical elements came into being. In the beginning, what scientists call the Big Bang, what Michael and I like to call the Great Radiance. Universe expanding, everything radiating out, brilliant light from a single point in space. The Great Radiance. In the beginning, when that energy cooled, all there was the simplest atoms, just gases, hydrogen and helium, a little bit of lithium too, but great clouds of hydrogen gas, hydrogen and helium. And again, these pillars here are great clouds of hydrogen and helium gases. In the beginning, those clouds began to congeal in points just by gravity, drawing together massive amounts of hydrogen being squeezed together by gravity. And out of that, stellar nucleosynthesis, the fusion of hydrogen through pressure and heat, fusing together into helium. This is what our sun is doing right now. And the stars lit up. Right now, our sun, Helios, old Greek name Helios, or is it Roman? But Greek name Helios, this is what helium was named for. It was first discerned in the spectrograph of light coming from the sun. We couldn't find helium here on Earth, but we found it in the light. Hydrogen turning into helium, and you know what's going to happen another 5 billion years from now? Our sun's about 5 billion years old. In the beginning, 14 billion years ago, our sun lit up about 5 billion years ago. We've got here today, and we've got another 5 billion years to go before our sun will turn into a red giant. At that point, it will have used up all the hydrogen in its core, turned it into helium, and the helium will begin fusing into carbon, the very atom of life, right? And then our sun will die. Our sun will die. 9 billion years of ancestor stars are vital to this story, this epic of evolution, this amazing journey that the atoms within us have been on. All of the other atoms, the sodium in our salt, the silicon in rocks, the calcium in our bones, the chlorine in swimming pools and water systems, the iron in our cars, the gold and the silver that we may be wearing right now. All of these were created in much larger stars than our sun, giant blue-white stars. Most of the stars we see up there that we can see in the night sky are blue-white stars because they're so much brighter than our sun. They also have shorter lives, more massive, more gravity. Some of these stars that are big blue-white stars only live 20 to 40 million years. Our sun will live 10 billion years before it too dies and pulses back to the universe some of what it's created in its lifetime. We now know that not only are we made of stardust, every single atom of carbon in our cells, every single atom of oxygen we breathe in, every single atom of calcium we wish we had more of in our bones, some of us. All of these atoms were once inside the bellies of giant ancestor stars who lived and died and recycled their creativity back to the universe before our own sun was born. Call it God, call it the goddess, call it cosmic creativity, call it nature, call it the universe creativity, whatever your name for this creative process. It's the reason all of us are here today. We all have ancestor stars, and we are made of stardust. We are made of stardust. Any of you remember Carl Sagan's program in 1980, Cosmos? Did any of you see it then? I saw it in 1980. Near the end, Carl Sagan speaks these amazing words. He says, "We are the local embodiment of a cosmos grown to self-awareness. We have begun to contemplate our origins. We are star-stuck, pondering the stars. We are star-stuck, pondering the stars. We have a connection through science that we can celebrate in our Unitarian Universalist congregations without fear of a parent walking out for biblical literalism here. We celebrate the science, and we know it brings us a deeper sense of divinity, a grander sense of divinity in the universe than without the scientific underpinning. Michael and I, we've been traveling around for 6 years now, speaking in a variety of public and secular and religious venues. And we never present this story as this is the truth, therefore you must take it on. Our sense is this: may the best story win. May the best story win. We operate through allurement. Can we tell the scientific story of cosmic evolution, planetary evolution, geological evolution, life evolution, cultural evolution? Can we tell all the evolutionary sciences in ways that kids and adults feel, this is a cool story. This is my story. It makes me feel great to be alive here on Earth and be part of this amazing universe. I was doing a program for a Montessori school, and I heard from a teacher that the very next day she was out on the playground and she heard one boy saying to another, "Even bugs are made of stardust." There was a woman in Durango. Michael and I did a UU summer camp there 2 summers in a row. And a woman came up to me the second summer and she said, "I've got to tell you a story. Last time you were here, I brought my 2 sons. One was 5½, one was 3½, to your Stardust program." Now, I didn't think the younger one at 3½ was going to get anything from it, but I just brought him along. Well, let me tell you, he must have. Let me tell you what he told me last week. So again, this is a year later. But he told me last week, I was telling him a story about something that had happened to our family. Something happened to our family in the past. And he said, "Mom, was I born yet?" Speaking as a mom, "No, you weren't born yet." He said, "Oh, was I in your belly yet?" "No." He said, "Ah, I must have still been stardust. I must have still been stardust." When I present the Stardust program, part of it is to give kids, reconnect them with the night sky. As the Native Americans all had stories of connection with the night sky, as with everything else. Can Westerners, can those of us deeply influenced by the scientific perspective have that connection? Can we have a feeling that when we breathe, let's take a moment here, breathe in and out, that even in our breath, what we breathed in, nitrogen, oxygen, what we breathed out, carbon dioxide. We're communing with red giant ancestor stars every time we breathe. And this is something that no culture could have known before we had our science, our technologies to be able to sense that. Our global scientific enterprise, scientists working from all ethnicities, all religions, everywhere in the world, pooling knowledge together. And what my husband on July 9th will talk about is public revelation. Public revelation. As we've had private revelation through time, prophets, seers, mystics, public revelation. Coming together through the worldwide enterprise of science beyond the heart and mind of any single individual. A new level of knowledge and revelation coming through. We can understand that when we breathe. The other reason I always like to present this Stardust program for kids is that I can think of no better way to introduce anyone, particularly children, to an understanding that death is a natural and generative, creative part of the world than this understanding. Death will come to all of us in our lives unless we ourselves die very young. Let's hope it begins with a pet. Next, it may be a grandparent. In my sense, it wasn't a pet or a grandparent. It was my father who died first while I was still a very early teen. I had no understanding, no cosmic container to put the understanding of death into so that I could allow myself to grieve fully. There was something wrong here. It's not that this understanding of without the death of stars, there could be no planets and no life. Do you get that? Without the death of ancestor stars, 9 billion years of stars lighting up and dying, and lighting up and dying, and lighting up and dying before our own sun was born, without that process, there could be no planets and no life. In the beginning, the first stars that lit up from the hydrogen and the helium had no planets around them, no rocky planets, no life. We are the first people to be able to have an explanation for how death came into the world and say, hallelujah. Nothing wrong here. Without the death of stars, there could be no planets and no life. God for us, for those of us Unitarian Universalists who use the word God or Goddess or any sacred name, is not relegated to the heavens, but it's right here on earth. How did Western culture relegate God to the heavens? Think about it. We see death all around us here on earth. Where's the one place we don't see death? In the heavens. Orion, the constellation named thousands of years ago, it's still there. It's still there. But you know what? Every one of those stars is going to die within 20 to 40 million years. And the red giant, Betelgeuse, in this part of Orion, you know, Orion the hunter with its belt and the sword, this star here, look at it. It's orange. It's a red giant. Scientists say it's going to die within 250,000 years. It's on its way out. We now know that the heavens are not immortal. And therefore, if immortality is a necessary part of the divine, you're not even going to be able to find it in the heavens. We have to reclaim death as having a divine component to it, a rightness to it, a yes to it, no matter how much it grieves our hearts. There was a UU religious educator who told me in Denver, she works in Denver at the UU in Denver, and she told me a Native American story that she said here, something you might want to supplement, because some of the Native Americans have had very beautiful stories for how death came into the world. Our Western story from the Protestant heritage, of course, there was no death in the Garden of Eden until Adam sinned, disobedience, and then death came into the world. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered the world, so by sin came death. How death would be different in our culture if that were not our creation story. There's something wrong with death. We, human sin, is the reason people have to die. Our loved ones have to die. Here's a Native American story. Great Spirit came to the people, and Great Spirit said, you have a choice. You can either have immortality, or you can have children. Get that? Immortality or children. You can see any ecological group living in an area like this, bounded by other tribal cultures. You know that you can't have birth and birth and birth and birth without death of elders. You use up the landscape. It's an ecological, basic understanding. Great Spirit said you can have immortality or you can have birth. Choose. People argued and argued, and finally the grandmothers went aside and sat in circle, and it was unanimous. We choose to die. We choose to always have birth. We want children in our midst. And that's how death came into the world. What a different vision. This understanding can also bring that same vision to us. I was in a UU church about 6 months ago, doing a sermon very much like this, and there was a woman sitting in the front who came up to me afterwards in tears, and she said, my son died 6 months ago, and this is the first thing I've heard to help me with my grief. I talked to the minister afterwards, and she said that woman had lost not only her college-age son, but it was a suicide. Now this doesn't take away the grief, but it gives a cosmic container to hold that grief. And this is something that I think we as Unitarian Universalists who celebrate one of our sources is humanist teachings that counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. We can bring this teaching out into the world and encourage other churches to take it on as well. Let me close with a song I wrote. Michael and I did the world's first evolutionary revival at the big UU church in San Diego. Last February. It was fabulous. We had great musicians. We had amazing music going on, stand-up singing. I mean, I've been in praise churches before. I've been in the biggest mega church in America, Joel Osteen's Lakewood. I was saved there. I mean, it's amazing being where you can praise worship. So I decided to do, instead, I was supposed to teach the Stardust part, but I didn't want to give up and get a science talk. So I did, based on a pagan chant from our UU pagan heritage. I took a chant tune and remodeled it to give the chemistry. So let me sing it for you here. In the beginning was the great radiance, 14 billion years ago. Out of the fireball came simple hydrogen and helium in that great glow. Gravity swirled those gases into stars, white, yellow, blue, and red. But no dancing planets till the birth of silicon, calcium, iron, calcium, iron, and lead. The first generations of ancestor stars squeezed primal gases into stone, into oxygen and into nitrogen, into calcium for antler and bone. We are made of stardust, we are born from death, creature cousins who twinkle in the night. What do we savor in our brief flickering lives? What do we leave for our descendants' delight? Gravity swirled those gases into stars, red, yellow, blue, and white. What do we savor in our brief flickering lives? What do we leave for our descendants' delight? What do we leave for our descendants' delight? What do we leave for our descendants' delight? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Our closing song will be in our blue, our turquoise hymnal supplements.
Join us for worship service every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. The church is located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Call for information or directions 585-396-1370. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or write to us at P.O. Box 204, Canandaigua, New York 14424. The latest issue of our newsletter, The Chalice, look at our website, www.uucc.us. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham. We thank the following for their advice, assistance, and equipment: Stegman Sear Productions, FLTV Cable 12, Dave Conyer, and Frank Blanky.